Cheers, y'all. I just got back from seeing Thor The Dark World right now, and I'm going to launch into a bit of a review here. I'm going to let the first 5 to 10 minutes be non-spoilerish type stuff, and then after that mark, I'm going to launch off into some spoilerish stuff. So, if you want to see this, just for what I say about the movie in general, you're fine, and then after that, hey, we're off into spoiler territory. With this movie, I like this a lot better than I did the first Thor movie. The first Thor movie I still like, but it's a little bit subdued. I think part of what that had to do with is that after the first installment of Iron Man and the first installment of the Hulk, actually the only installment of the Incredible Hulk we have for the cinematic universe, this one was just kind of there. It was okay. It didn't really wow me in any ways. Some parts of the movie looked pretty good, but it was just kind of your standard superhero type movie. But with The Dark World, we have a much better step in the right direction than we had with, say, like a second installment of Iron Man. I still like those movies. The thing that we kind of had to hammer out where it went wrong with the second Iron Man is we had too much of a presence of S.H.I.E.L.D. being built up in this movie. And I think that after we got post Avengers 1, now we can just kind of start letting these sequels do what they're supposed to do. And this one managed to capture everything that I like about Thor. There's a lot of fan service in this movie. I'm going to say that this movie has been probably the best fan service that I've seen out of all these Marvel movies, or at least the Disney Marvel movies. And I used to think Captain America was the best for its fan service. Now this has kind of surpassed it a little bit. Everything with this movie was good as far as an aesthetic went. Some of the performances in this movie did not really impress me as much as they should have. I'm kind of looking at Natalie Portman on this, and Chris Eccleston, although this is not entirely Eccleston's fault. Kenneth Branagh shows up, or not Kenneth Branagh, but Chris Hemsworth shows up in this movie as Thor. He owns the part. And kind of a couple of things that irked me with this movie too, not that it's the movie's fault, but this is the second Thor installment, and this is the third time that we've seen Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston on screen as their characters. And as a second installment of Thor, it feels very much like a third installment in the franchise. A lot of stuff that happens, and especially the battle at the end of the movie, with the way that it's set up. Majority of the things with these third comic book movie installments is that we have a specific location which is peaked out for the climactic battle of the movie. And shit gets trashed like usual. And the movie is still really good, but it just kind of left me with a feeling of disjointedness a little bit because I'm not used to having the movies come out this fast. And especially seeing the same characters not even a year after the first, well, a little over a year after the first Avengers movie. It's a little strange, but I got used to it as it went on. Chris Hemsworth owns the part as Thor, but this movie belongs squarely to Loki. Tom Hiddleston does the best that he can. There was another reviewer that pointed out Loki's performances and the different layers that Hiddleston gets into with Loki with this movie. In the first movie, we were dealing with the family stuff, as Blows Himself Up Dude says. In this movie, in the Avengers movie, he was, the straight out villain with a bit of a spoiled brat to him. And in this one, he's more of Loki the trickster. And there are some kind of points from Walt Simonson's run that definitely do stand out to me as being that type of Loki that we were looking to, not just the I'm a bad guy, trickster type. He's actually a bit more of a smartass in this movie. Well, he was in the other movies, but we get to see much more of it parlayed with his performance, and I love that. Some of the other characters in this movie are a little bit subdued. Not Loki, but Sif is kind of underplayed, and the Warriors 3 are kind of underplayed. They really don't have what you would call their big parts until about an hour into the movie, which is a little bit disappointing to me, because I would have liked to have seen them more. But for when we do get to them, they are pretty good. Sif, I liked. There's kind of this thing with her that's a very subdued, string-sized subplot running through the movie about her being a little bit jealous of Jane Foster. But that's really about it. Volstagg really gets the most attention in this movie that I'm satisfied with. And it's kind of hit a point with me, even to some of the European fans of this who know who David Gemmell is. Whenever I sat down to read Druce, the warrior with the big butterfly axe, I always kind of pictured him with Sean Connery's accent talking. But seeing Ray Stevenson in this movie running around with that axe, with his accent, I'm kind of starting to picture myself imagining Druce a little bit differently when I sit down to read David Gemmell's books about him. I would really like to see him as Druce. May most likely not happen, but that's just kind of what it struck me as. I'm also disappointed that a lot of the spoilers got leaked out so soon with this movie, with the fact that I don't know why, but apparently now Marvel movies are starting to show up in other countries a week before America gets it, and I really don't like that. And people can just go and be straight out assholes about their we're not really spoiling stuff, but we'll tell you that there's a twist coming, or there's going to be something crazy that happens in this movie. And I'm really sick of that. There was kind of a point to where I'm trying as much as possible to avoid spoilers for these movies. And a lot of things with this Thor movie, I knew pretty much the basics of what was going to happen. But then somehow, there's a friend that I had on Facebook who was actually over from England, and he kind of let out a lot of spoilers about this movie, and I was really upset about that. Just kind of like knowing where certain twists and things will come along, and that really irked me badly. So, for future reference, I'm going to stay away from... I'll still catch trailers, but I'm staying away from any type of spoilers or stuff that comes up. If I have Facebook friends that are watching this, that are also part of the YouTube comic book community, please, if you get the movies a week before we do, please keep the spoilers to a minimum and keep your friends across the pond in mind that we haven't seen these movies and we like to come into them as without having any kind of foreknowledge that may sway our opinions of this movie, and just let us be able to enjoy them without heads up on crazy shit about to happen. Really, one of the downsides of this movie that I'm going to get into now is two of the actors. Natalie Portman's in this movie. She gives a little bit more in this movie in her performance and her relationship with Thor, much more so, obviously, than she did with Lucas's prequel trilogy. Here, she's able to act a little bit better by a director who understands how actors are supposed to emote. But also more for the fact that she at least seems to have an attraction to the co-star that she's acting with, and that can make at least for a much better played out scene for me than what the awkward love scenes were from the Star Wars prequels. But while I commend that part of her performance, she did have to kind of force herself into that. Not as much as the Star Wars movies, but with this, she's with this movie strictly because she's under contract, and I don't feel like she was entirely invested in her role, which is kind of a downside to me. Chris Eccleston in this movie. I'm not familiar with anything that he was in beforehand, and as I'm kind of sitting there and watching this movie, he's kind of treated like a mouthpiece in this movie, which is a real disappointment to me. I'm pretty sure that he's a good actor, and he did the best he can with what he got, or what he was given to work with. Anybody who are kids who have never read comics, or teenagers or adults who are uninitiated into who Malekith is, will probably be disappointed with this. I know that the character was not going to have motivations outside of, I'm evil, I'm the last of my race, and I want to restore things, or at least destroy things, and restore them to the way they were before all the Nine Realms came to be. There's not really much of a range outside of his performance, and excuse me. Basically, the way that he came off playing Malekith in this movie is a lot like how what's his name? Eric Bana was playing Nero the Romulan from the first Abrams Star Trek movie. Except that he's just kind of more subdued in his performance. He's stoic, is the word I'm looking for. He's very stoic in his performance. And while that's kind of a good thing for his character, it's also really kind of a downer. I mean, if he's going to be evil, I want him to be a little bit over the top evil, like his comic book counterpart is. And the performance, just in the way he was directed, was a bit of a letdown to me. And there are a lot of other good things in this movie. It's a really good summer blockbuster that just decided to wait and come out in the fall instead. There's a lot of good things about this movie. Your kids will definitely enjoy it. You'll definitely enjoy it. If you're a fan of Kat Dennings from the Two Girls Who Run a Pizza Parlor, or whatever the hell that name of the show is that she's with, you'll love it because she's basically playing a young 20-something female Tony Stark in this movie with just one-liners coming out of the ass with this. A lot of the fun in the movie, and for you people who are uninitiated to it, I think you'll definitely enjoy this one. And that's it for my spoiler-free review. So, recommendations are you get out now, because I'm going to launch off into some heavy spoilerish territory with my true review of this movie, finally. Beer swig. Alright, so let's get down to business for this movie. First off, with this movie, I loved the fan service in this movie. Out of all the movies that have come so far, leading up to pre-Avengers or post-Avengers, Captain America was definitely my favorite for as much fan service as it threw out to people who definitely, you may not have read the comics, but you knew there were certain points to it, and this movie delivers in spades on that. I loved the nod back to the Journey into Mystery, which was the first appearance of Thor. You'll catch that in the early part of the movie. Let's see, what else is there? There's a lot of fan service from the Walt Simonson run. Now, there's not as much as I would have liked. The Walt Simonson stuff is dominated by Jack Kirby ideas. There are seconds to where I kind of felt in this movie that I was almost sitting in a New Gods movie. Because Jack Kirby did a lot of the New Gods stuff with Highfather, Orion, and Darkseid. And there was even one second where Thor was fighting Curse in this movie that it felt like almost a Superman versus Doomsday scenario, because Curse did kind of favor, in my eyes, a little bit of Doomsday. He definitely did portray the comic book counterpart. The amnesic algorithm is gone in this movie, and we have just a loyal lieutenant playing second in command to Malekith. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this guy's name because it's incredibly hard when I look at it. But he did pretty good for the time that you saw his face on screen, and with the green screen shots that he did in order to play Curse once he's transformed. Excuse me. everything I pretty much said about the Warriors 3 and Sif in this movie is still pretty much the same. When we get into some of the other stuff with this movie, I was really disappointed with Odin a little bit. Now, I love Anthony Hopkins, and there's kind of a point in this movie to where we're retreading familiar territory from the first movie. It's a little bit more involved, but there are a lot more jokes in this movie than there were in the previous movies. If we got Iron Man 3 and we got this, as many of the gags as there were in this movie, like, everybody is trying their hardest, it feels like, to emulate a lot of Joss Whedon type humor in order to keep viewers hooked on the movie, which is not a bad thing, but I just hope that, you know, the movies can find their own type of ground with humor, because a lot of this stuff, even though it was pretty funny, it still felt very Whedon-esque to me. The stuff with Malekith has not changed. When we get to the way that the character actually looks in the stories, I don't usually compare and contrast comic book movies, and especially with the way that the Iron Man 3 did with the Extremist story. I should really have no room to talk here, but with the way that Malekith looked in this movie, which is that he has one side which is a light color on his face, and then he has a really black side on his face, almost like an Elvis version of Two-Face. And there's kind of a moment where he's struck by lightning in this movie and burned horribly on the side of his face, and even after he gets the ether into him, it never heals. Which I was kind of scratching my head about. There's been a lot of changes to the Dark Elves in this movie. What they've done is that maybe there wasn't enough science fiction of the Kirby aspect that a lot of people really think about if they're Thor fans and they want to see it in a Thor movie. But when Asgard was originally used in the original Avengers and the Thor comics, it was very much when it was falling back on Norwegian mythology, it was very much a Eurocentric type thing. And there have been many cultures which have been ingrained into a lot of the different realms in this movie. Asgard has variations, mostly European stuff to it. But when they also bring in the space age blasters and the Chinese guns, or the prototype guns in this movie, I'm kind of intrigued by it. It's a little out of place to me, but at the same time, I can't help but get sucked into it and just enjoy all these Kirby-esque things, which is why I say that in some ways I felt like I was in the middle of New Gods. Malekith in this movie, they've taken a different approach with the Dark Elves. They're not a race, per se, which, by the way, Malekith looks like a light elf, and there's a lot of differences done. The Marvel movies have apparently carved out their own mythology for their takes on things. Malekith has been combined with a couple of points of Beta Ray Bill in this movie, which I was really surprised by. So far as I knew, I haven't read the complete stuff with Malekith in the Omnibus, but the Dark Elves have spaceships, which basically look like the Towers of Barad-dûr from the Lord of the Rings, turned upside down. And then there's like the damn mothership in this movie. Which I sat there and looked at it, and I'm like, Malekith is driving the scuttlebutt in this movie. He's driving Beta Ray Bill's ship. And the fact that Malekith wants to save what's left of his race, kind of like what Bill was wanting to do for the Corbinites, is kind of incorporated into his character. Which is interesting. Is a not really so much of a ballsy move, because a lot of people are not really going to know Malekith. But if you're sort of invested in a lot of the major runs of Thor, you'll either like this or you'll hate it. And I kind of like it. I can get around it. as to what the ether is in this movie, and with the revelation about the Tesseract from the last movie. The fact that they're infinity gems, and that they are not necessarily the spherical gems that we're used to from the comics, I can go with. If there's kind of an idea that we can, at least in this movie, kind of allow the gems to be something else, maybe they can change shape as they descend through certain parts of the Nine Realms, or in the entire expand of existence for the Marvel Universe. I can get around that. That would make a lot more sense for how things went with the Cosmic Cube, and with the way that the Ether works in this movie. Some of the stuff with the portals is pretty funny, but at other points, especially when we got into the end of the movie there, it was kind of all over the place. It was crazy. I mean, it wasn't a bad crazy, but it was just really all over the place. And I'm taking this entirely in movie logic. Now, there is some real science that applies to some of the ideas in this movie. I don't entirely understand how it works, and it's just really hard to wrap my head around that, so I just kind of space out a little bit when they talk about the physics, and I just chalk it up to movie logic and just roll with it. So the Infinity Gem stuff was pretty cool with this movie, and by the way, since we're in spoilers territory, no Doctor Strange reference in this movie. At least not that I caught. The stuff with Loki in this movie, and perhaps the one character that he may or may not have had connections to in Freyja, or Frigga. About, even without the spoilers, which were leaked when this movie was released elsewhere in the world, before this came out here, when they started paying more attention to Frigga, it kind of entered my mind that there is a possibility that she could die in this movie, and that eventually did happen. And a lot of the directions that they took with Thor and Loki, this movie managed to fool me a couple of times in scenes, especially with the encounter on the Dark World with Malekith after Thor appears to be betrayed by Loki, was really good. I really enjoyed that part of the movie. Now, here's really the clincher about this movie. The thing that people have talked about so much. This isn't as bad as the Mandarin twist, and the way that this ended on this movie, it nowhere near pissed me off. In fact, it didn't make me mad, but it wasn't like the end of Iron Man 3, which I lived with the Mandarin twist, but I was pissed that Tony decided at that point to take the arc reactor out of his chest. With this movie, at some point, Loki was able to somehow manage to slip back into Asgard, and at the end of the movie, it's revealed that he was actually posing as Odin on the throne, and Odin is nowhere in this movie to be found. I thought was really interesting. I knew this was coming, and if Loki somehow had a whim to take opportunity to be able to overwhelm Odin and swap him out while the incursion was going on in between the portals of the Nine Realms, if we're still going to be using Walt Simonson stuff for the next movie, any hardcore Thor fan, or even a casual one who knows Walt Simonson's run, will definitely know where this shit is going. And I really hope to see this villain. And I'm going to throw it out there right now. I hope we get fucking Surtur out of this, and we get, like, Ragnarok coming up some point for the third movie. I would really love to see that. This is comic book heavy metal at its best going on right now, and I love it. The ending was really good. And then we get to the two endings at the end of this movie, which was the post-credits, or the mid-credits scene, and then the post-credits scene. With the mid-credits scene, we get treated to the introduction of Benicio del Toro as the Collector in this movie. I have been going back and reading the issues, and I was really surprised to see him included into these movies. Now, he is a bit of a precursor, as we're still building off into the Thanos stuff. This is not. This is kind of setting up for the Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's also getting into a lot more of the Infinity Gems mythos, and it's setting up that the Thanos stuff for some time on down the road. With this, I really liked it. I was surprised that they chose to go with sort of a 60s motif for the Collector in this movie. He's got like this crazy fucking... He looks like... There's a white-haired guy from older movies that he looks like to me, but I can't think of his name right now. But he's decked out in like these fur-trimmed leopard print cloaks, and there are these strange-looking go-go girls that, or at least one go-go girl that was with him in the movie, and I was kind of almost expecting at some point for either... I'm almost either expecting Austin Powers type spy music to start playing to go along with this, or I kind of imagine Rob Zombie's Never Gonna Stop Me playing in my head when he showed up for the post-credits scene. But they sit there and they discuss the Infinity Gems for a little bit, and that's the end of the movie. So I really am curious to see what Benicio del Toro is going to do for the Guardians of the Galaxy movie now. I don't really know that much about him, but with that little scene, I'm kind of excited by the fact that he is being included in these movies now. The second post-credit scene, I'll agree with blows himself up, dude, after I listened to his review. This should have been this should have been the very last scene at the end of the Thor movie, but as it was trying to be the shawarma kind of ending that we got at the end of Avengers. The only thing I will say is that this ending to this movie is not, to me, it's not as much of a loss as people make it out to be. In fact, I found it to be a lot more funnier than the shawarma ending at the end of Avengers. So there's really a lot of good stuff in this movie. If there's downsides to this movie, it's already going to be what I've said with the performances. But aside from that, aside from the issue with some of the actors and the way the script went at like a few fluke places, I was really satisfied with this movie. Now, Iron Man 3 was pretty good because I was just looking at it as like Lethal Weapon with an Iron Man movie. This, although at times it feels like it's emulating Lord of the Rings, or at least to me with the Kirby-esque stuff, it's kind of emulating almost what I felt that New Gods were. This is a solid movie. It is very much its own. I really, really enjoyed this movie. So it's no surprise. Go out there, see it. I'm practically flaunting this movie. I would recommend that anybody check it out, and I've bantered on long enough. Go see it, enjoy it, love it, and just have a blast with it. Keep it 2D, though. There's not enough in here to really impress me as far as there being any indications of stuff that would have jumped out at you if this film had been converted into 3D. Stick with 2D, and you'll be just fine. That's it. The Great Southern Trendkill is out, and I hope y'all enjoyed this review. Go see this movie, and I will catch y'all next time. Peace.